Okay. Okay. Welcome once more to the Life After Vista training by Most Network. We're going to get started right now. So, quick sound off in the chat. What is everyone's goals or plans for after service if you already have some? And Almeida, maybe you can read some of those out once they come in.
Sure. So Joe says state government.
Very good.
Django is returning to college. Alyssa says working for a nonprofit or state government. Kirsten is also going back to school, grad school.
Excellent. All great examples of what you can choose or plan to do after your AmeriCorps service term. So going back, continuing education, seeking employment in the nonprofit sector and the public sector, otherwise, uh, those are more service, all great options to consider. Thank you for that. So we want to just highlight this end of service timeline for you all are probably in different, portions of your service term, somewhere between 3 and 9 months is what we are assuming here. So these are a lot of the key actions that you can already start to take to prepare for life after Vista. So currently, if you're in that 3 to 6 month period, you should be taking part in professional development. You should be journaling. You should be using monthly report structure to track your accomplishments, uh, maintaining a good list of contacts and folks that you could potentially use as a reference, and also doing some research on either type of profession you'd like to explore, or school or an education you'd like to pursue. In the 6 to 9 month period, so maybe about 3 months before you finish service, you should start to seriously consider an interview for positions, setting up informational interviews with folks in the relevant field or area of study you'd like to engage in. Start to consider AmeriCorps service another year and potentially speak with your current service site about re-enrollment. Also signing up for the Vista Campus Job Board, signing up for and creating profiles on other online employment websites such as usajobs.gov, the federal hiring platform, but also there's job board on Vista Campus. You can look into signing up for LinkedIn, all sorts of other great things, and begin to, if you are going to consider federal employment, we'll get into that a little later, but that application process and resume is much more substantial than a lot of other employment opportunities. So you'd want to start on that around the 6 month mark, even a little before some of those other options. Continuing with this timeline, so say you're in the last 4 months or so of your position. That's when you're really going to be 3 to 4 months. You're going to want to start applying seriously to those positions, those jobs, to this employment for employment's sake. Yeah, for school, we'll talk about that in a later section. You're going to want to start that process a little earlier than the job application process. But towards the end of your service, you're going to want to complete your future plans form, which is on myamericorps.gov. You need to complete this form to either choose re-enrollment, to indicate you're going to end service on time, but also to get the sponsoring organization to complete their section of this future plans form in order to have you receive your end of service award on time. You're going to want to make sure you have the right end of service award. You can only change the award from education to cash one time, and you're not allowed to switch back. You have up until month 10 to do that. So something to consider and double check on what is your end of service award. Once you complete all of those forms, if you had traveled to serve and you filled out a travel profile, then you'll also need to complete this close of service travel voucher, something to consider as well. And once you're finished with service, be sure to download your verification of service letter. You can also update your contact information on AmeriCorps.gov, and then you can use this service letter. You can use your NCE status and otherwise update your resume so that you're ready for hopefully either that next opportunity, that job, or school soon after your completed service. Okay, we have a couple more folks entering the room. Thank you. We'll just get that out. Right. Okay, we're gonna keep moving here. So for your end of service award, double check which one you chose. If you chose the education award, you can change that to the end of service cash stipend before the end of your 10th month. And you can change it on AmeriCorps.gov, myAmeriCorps.gov, under edit end of service option. You cannot change it back once you have chosen the cash award. If you have questions about that, or you would like to follow up on that with the VISTA member support unit, you can give them a call and see if they can help you to change that if you think there's something that you did by accident. Things to consider if you choose the end of service cash stipend, it's approximately $1,800, but it is considered taxable. FICA applies to that from the get-go. So it's a little different than your regular biweekly living allowance, where some taxes are automatically withheld. Typically, it arrives split in half or in two portions in your last two paychecks. You'll receive one around your last week's service, and you might receive one after you've completed service. For the education award, it is considered the max amount of a Pell grant in a given year that you started your project. So currently that's about $7,300. You can hold on to it. You don't need to use it right away. You can hold on to it for 7 years. It can be used for federal student loans that you already have, or it could be used for future costs for education at credited institutions. You can receive up to 2 of those in your lifetime as a service member, whether VISTA, AmeriCorps State and National, any of the programs. You can only receive the max about 2 of those. How do you use it? Once you've finished your service, then it should be accessible through AmeriCorps.gov. You can go to your homepage. You should be able to go to My Education Award, and then you can go to requests. You'll need to send that to your loan holder, which might not be your school, so double check on that. You can make partial payments. You don't need to use it all at once. So over those 7 years, you could split it up into only $1,000 at a time. But be sure to use all of it before that date. Interest repayment is a different subject. It's not through the education award. Also a question that you could, that's an AmeriCorps, we'll go back that's a my.americorps.gov question. And so for more info on using your Ed Award or discussing the interest, call the VMSU, the VISTA Member Support Unit, and they will be able to guide you through many things using the website. They're the best folks to talk to about technical questions. If you're going to be paying for future expenses, not paying loans back, this is possible. It's going to be done through your educational institutions, your college, university's bursar's office. It can be used for tuition, but also could be used for books, for travel, for room and board, all sorts of costs related to school. Another thing to mention is that this is also taxable in a slightly different way, where if you use a portion of your education award, it'll show up in tax time as a 1099 form that will be sent to you. This is different than your W-2. This will be a 1099, so it's a separate form. Taxes are calculated different than income. It's considered a special income. So the more of that you use, the higher your taxes are going to be, which is a good reason for considering splitting up how much you use in a year and making sure that you're not paying too much taxes. I split mine at least into half when I had received it. Another special thing here that we like to highlight is that for the past couple of years at least, there has been a student loan tax relief or a debt relief tax credit. So this process application should open up in the summer. And Maryland taxpayers, you have to be a resident of Maryland and paid taxes this year. But if you do so, then you should be able to, if you have student loan debt currently, at least 5,000, then you can receive some credit, and it's worth filling out. It is not guaranteed, but it is recommended as you should qualify if you have really even 5,000. We'll follow up. We're going to send this out afterwards, but if you would like this link specifically, we can provide that to you. That's the student loan debt relief tax credit through the state of Maryland. Another quick reminder here is that if you relocated to serve, so if you traveled over 50 miles to serve at your project site and you filled out that travel profile to do so and were reimbursed, you'll also be able to fill out again to travel back. It doesn't have to be the same address that you traveled to serve, but you will need to fill out that form. I think it said about 15 days before your end of service. More info on this in Chapter 7 of the VISTA Member Handbook. And if you haven't checked out your handbook or VISTA Campus online in a while, this is your reminder to use those resources. You will be filling that out on your AmeriCorps.gov website homepage. All right, I'm gonna switch over. So thank you all so much, Almeda. We're gonna have you take the next portion when you're ready.
Yes.
All right.
Telling your Vista story. Um, so this is some great advice for resume writing, interviewing, college essays, your elevator pitch, especially if you're networking at conferences, career fairs, anywhere where you're making connections for future career opportunities, going back to school, all of that stuff. What is an elevator pitch? Uh, it is a short speech, 60 seconds or less, ideally, where you are introducing yourself, what you do, what you've done, especially why it is relevant to the person you're speaking to, which is especially great for networking in person. Like I mentioned, people have, if you're at a conference, people have different talks that they want to go to. You might not have a lot of time to meet with people and to have really in-depth discussions. But if there's somebody in a career field that you want to go into and you really want to make connection with them and have a longer discussion, Uh, yeah, the elevator pitch is what you want to use to make that connection. So ideally 60 seconds or less. You can end it saying, let's exchange contact information. Do you have a longer period of time to talk later today or sometime in the future? My advice for that would be when you're practicing, actually set up a timer. Um, it's also a good opportunity to reflect on your service. Um, you know, what does your choice to serve say about you, the things you learned, experience you gained? Um, really think back through your year of service and sort of practice distilling the essential parts of it. Um, yeah, framing your service, pulling out the essential parts of your service, since it has to be short. But that's great practice also for when you're going into resume writing. Um, if you have to write a letter of intent, if you're applying to grad programs, um, all of that. So specifically, for most Vistas, we ask that you have a monthly report that you send to us with narratives and also numbers. That's another good reason personally for you to fill those out and maybe keep some notes from those for yourself in the future, because those things can go back into your elevator pitch, your resume, um, that sort of thing. So keeping a record of that is not just good for um, me and Andrew and most for our reports to AmeriCorps, it's also good for you. Yeah. Next slide. So, some specific advice for writing your resume, summarizing your service, um, listing accomplishments. You want to include as specific numbers as possible. Using power words and phrases or action verbs is another way you could describe them. Um, Here's an example. I think there's a whole list of different action verbs that you can use, specifically applying to tasks Vistas usually use in the Life After Vista guide from AmeriCorps, which I think we will also be sending out with this recording and this Prezi um, afterwards. So you can look through that if you are struggling to think of how to describe what you've done with an action verb specifically. Um, Double checking for spelling, formatting, and grammatical errors, of course. Um, you want it to look as professional as possible, and those don't look as professional. Um, but I can give you some examples from my resume specifically. So from my year of service, I wrote things like planned events with over 1,000 attendees as part of a 3-person team. That's it gives them a sense of the scale of the events that I was planning and also how many people I was working with. Uh, Being a team player is good, and also the fact that it wasn't a very large team, um, I think is important just to show how much work each of us must have been doing and how involved we must have all been in every aspect of this event to make sure it works. Another example, conducted outreach to over 100 college students during my year of service. Um, Performed research on 166 species of plants and procured 43 different types of seeds for a student garden. I had a whole Excel sheet full of all that. So I had the exact numbers. And yeah, so not just keeping records in your monthly reports. If you are filling out Excel sheets, you're getting lists of contacts for students, you can keep a record of all of that as well to put into your resume. Um, so I also have some other resume writing advice. I graduated from college in 2020, so I was having meetings with the careers office at my college in 2019, and they had some advice that has um, changed a bit with the changing technology landscape. Um, so I got a different talk during my year of service in my life after service training, specifically discussing how AI scanning tools are being used to screen resumes now. It's becoming more common. So the typical advice, always have your resume in a PDF format might not apply as much since AI struggles to read PDFs, as those are photos. So um, I would keep my resume in a Word doc format and a PDF format. Obviously, if the place you are applying to says send us your resume in a PDF, you should do that. Yeah, you should always be tailoring your resume to the specific position you are applying to, the organization, what they're looking for, um, and also in the formatting, um, using AI searchable words is a good strategy. Also, um, things like I have a list here. Mm, yeah, things like data entry, mentioning specific technological applications you've used, such as Excel, Word Office, Microsoft Office. This example I have mentions national disaster preparedness as well. Um, so yeah, being specific as possible in your descriptions, uh, since AI is being used to screen for keywords like that. Um, Also, not using interesting fonts, um, since AI can also struggle to read those. That's always been a piece of advice I've heard. Also, if you make it look too weird, it's going to be hard to read, even for a regular human. So keep keep it a little bit boring. Um, yeah. Yeah, 10 essentials of resume writing, tailoring your resume to each job, consistent formatting, being clear and concise, quantifying your accomplishments as much as possible, keywords, no more than 2 pages. Um, yes, the text boxes can also be an issue for AI systems. So avoid text boxes as well. Thank you, Alyssa, for mentioning that. Okay, framing your Vista title in your resume. You can either list AmeriCorps Vista as your employer and then your host site, or your host site as your employer and then AmeriCorps Vista. A third option that I have seen is to put your title, your Vista title specifically, and then AmeriCorps Vista, and then your host site. If you think that my Vista title during my first year was community ambassador, so for example, if I were applying to a role that is as a community ambassador, perhaps I would like to say community ambassador first and front load that since it matches the position I'm actually applying to, and then say, as an AmeriCorps Vista at this site, essentially. So there are multiple ways to format this. Um, if instead you know maybe the person hiring for that position um, is an AmeriCorps Vista alum, perhaps then you'd like to say, hey, I was an AmeriCorps Vista on your resume, and then say, in this position at this site. Um, yeah. So you can make that decision, tailor it to the position you are applying to the organization you are applying to. Um, all of those are correct ways. Okay. Next, moving on to the job search. Ideally, 3 to 6 months before the end of your current term. If you are looking for a job after service, maybe a bit earlier than that if you are applying to a job with the federal government specifically, since sometimes applications for those take a bit longer. But yeah, ultimately the timeline depends on you. Things to keep in mind. This is another reason to be collecting business cards. If you go to any conferences, any networking events, I kept a folder specifically of business cards during my year of service. Um, so just to keep a record of the people you've spoken to, where they are, where they're working, if a job um, comes up at their organization, you can reach out to them or mention during your interview, hey, I've spoken to this person. Um, yeah, people who can help you during your search, speak to your professional experience, give you recommendations, all of that, super important. Um, Informational interviews as well. This was actually a new subject for me as I was reviewing for this presentation, but I think it sounds really great. I've been asking around for some of them. I've done some research on informational interviews because it was also not something that came up when in 2019 when the career office was explaining how to get a job after college to me. But informational interviews, if you've attended any informational sessions for a graduate program or any kind of college program, it's a bit like that, but it's individual. You can reach out to people in your dream job at your dream company. If they're interested in doing an informational interview with you, you can then ask them any questions you have. What's the job like? How did you get into this position? Um, what sort of qualifications might help me get a job like what you do in the future? What's the company culture like? If it's a particular organization that you are interested in getting a job with in the future. So Indeed has a whole selection of articles specifically about informational interviews, email templates to send out. Not every organization does list their employees and contact information for them on their website. So, for example, my personal dream job might be something like experiential designer at the aquarium. Um, and the aquarium does not list its employees on its website. So then I might send an email to HR saying, hey, this is what I'm interested in with somebody from this department. Um, would anybody be interested in doing this with me? Could you put me in contact with them, give them my information? Um, could also go in person or go on LinkedIn or any of the networking websites and see if anybody there is listed publicly in this department. Um, and then maybe message them there. Those are some options. Also, you want to make profiles on LinkedIn, Indeed, Glassdoor, um, all of those sites, because that's also a way to apply to jobs. So some more information, things that you might want to keep in mind if you're having an interview, um, the parts of your work that have been the most successful, enjoyable, also struggles that you might have had during your year. Um, if you are thinking about struggles, I always try to think of scenarios where I also overcame something. Um, I find that those answers are what employers are looking for most often because it demonstrates how did you handle being in a difficult situation, what sort of problem solving did you do? Um, yeah, always, even when you're discussing things that are hard or unpleasant or maybe skills that you want to build up, you should also be trying to find ways to market yourself still. That's just a general interview tip. Okay. Did you want to jump in on this section, Andrew, or specifically the USA jobs?
I could help with all of the federal hiring portion,
Okay.
so I can help out here. Thank you for all of that info covered. Very important stuff. It is recommended to look more into resume crafting and interview preparation, skills related to that portion of the job search. There is, as Almeida mentioned, going to be a packet that we send out after this presentation, which has a lot of helpful tips and examples on both of those subjects. So we're going to discuss the NCE status next and using the USA Jobs platform because it is different than employing for a regular job, and NCE status is a uh, very unique benefit that you receive from serving as a VISTA member. So what is it? It's a special hiring status which applies for 1 year after your service term is completed. It allows federal agencies to hire you without going through certain portions of the competitive process. It speeds it up, and it is a significant advantage, which can lead to your receiving employment with the federal government. How do you use it? You can print it off with your end of service letter when you complete, and then include it with your application, or you can mention it on your resume, on a cover letter. An example of how to mention that is right here below. You're going to want to put your dates that it is active from. if you apply to federal employment before you complete your term, you could also put this into your cover letter and mention when you expect to receive it. So it's a handy thing. It's certainly something to use. You could put it on your LinkedIn profile. You can use it in an informal sense if you haven't finished service, but then also that entire year afterwards, you should use it if you can. Quick note here, you can. It does not guarantee a federal job, but it makes it easier. It is good for 1 year after close of service, but there are special reasons that it can be extended for up to an additional 2 years. So 3 years total. CNCS does not make the determination on that extension, but it would be the federal agency you're applying to. The reasons that you could get an extension are as follows. For continuing service, either military, Peace Corps, but also for studying at school, going back to school, uh, any recognized institution. And once you complete, say, a graduate program, then you're able to use that NCE status. Something you may want to check with the agency before undergoing that. There are some other activities, paid or unpaid, which the hiring agency can recognize. So typically, you're going to be thinking of using that status right after you finish, but there are a couple of reasons that you could extend it. Just want to make everyone aware of that. So this is where the NCE status would be used, the usajobs.gov, and you do need to create a profile, much like you made a profile for your AmeriCorps account before you applied for service. It is a lengthy process creating the application. You would create a profile and then you would make an application for each role that you or position you're interested in. You would also need to craft a federal resume and tailor it to each position specifically. Typically, we earlier we said that a resume should be about 2 pages long. For the federal resume, there is no sort of maximum or minimum, really. It should be as long as it needs to be, and really all the relevant experience that applies should be put on there. And it can be, yes, it can be lengthy in all respects. Your descriptions, the amount of opportunity, jobs you've had, volunteer experience, otherwise, important stuff. You would, in this timeline here, you can see all the different steps. You create your profile, you look for positions, job opportunities, then you apply, you tailor your resume and you apply. The agency you would be considered before everyone who doesn't have that special NCE status or who's not already a federal employee. And then you would hopefully be, with all luck, evaluated, and interviewed. This could take up to 6 months to get to all the way to this point where you are actually conducting interviews. Be sure to have good references, 2 to 3. Be sure to check in with your references before you select them and make sure that they are aware you're going to be using them for that. Then they'll be that much ready to write a good recommendation for you. You'll receive a job offer. There's probably a background check that you would have to go through, and depending on the position, there can be different levels of security for that. And typically your former employer and otherwise folks you'll want professional or not family members, you'll want to put down for that whatever security check might occur. And that's usually a brief form that individual has to fill out. I've done many of those. I've done references and always appreciate doing that for VISTA members who've been through the program. And it's really not that bad. It's not that strenuous to undergo. So don't be afraid of doing those background checks and then you should get the letter. And as long as you pass that check, you are good to go, and you'll start with whatever job that is. We have seen Vista members use their service letters and their NCE in the past and receive employment with AmeriCorps, with FEMA, with the EPA, Department of Transportation, all sorts of different organizations. And I've also had folks, apply. I'm not sure if they got the positions, but we've had Defense Department, we've had State Department, all sorts of background checks requested. So there's a lot out there to consider. I know it's kind of a scary, tough time for the federal job market right now. So also potential reason to delay your NCE status and go to school or find a way to keep that going for a couple extra years before you use it. If you're interested, I think there's no harm trying. You should certainly try and look for job openings after you complete service while you're completing service and apply. Some additional things to keep in mind for the federal resume is that the process is very strict. You have to make sure that you meet all qualifications of the job that are listed and describe them well, having those relevant experiences, listing all those accomplishments, and proving that you can perform those tasks, choosing good references, making sure you have clear start and end dates, that your references uh, can also certify. And yes, but how many hours a week you worked? Okay. That's it for the federal employment portion of our training. But I can continue with just one or two more slides here. So yes, if you're interested in nonprofit jobs, which we did here at the start, a couple of you are, using your current connections and making contacts through your current Vista work is one of the best ways that you can achieve that. Be sure to be able to describe your position and what you did easily and without, using, too much jargon that someone might not understand. But you are going to want some of it to make sure folks know that you know what you're talking about. Try not to use too many. Yeah, try to fully spell out what your organization is, not using too many condensed titles, things like that. Idealist is another job search website to consider as well. Not just Indeed, but Idealist is more based around public and nonprofit job opportunities. Sign up for newsletters. The Most newsletter, for example, has job opportunities in it that are related to youth development, after school, to education, and some government as well. Sign up for other local or field-based newsletters. Last thing to consider, aside from further education or full-time employment, is to stay at your Vista site or to serve another Vista term or another AmeriCorps term in general. Right around now, 6 months to 9 months is a good time to bring up that option and ask your supervisor, see if that's something that they might want to consider. If they are, if they want to renew the project for another year and they're going to be recruiting anyway, it's great to offer that you might want to serve another time. It could help them out, it could help you out if it's what you want to do, but also know that you can consider other options as well and other sites. You do not need to just serve at the same site again. Although having 2 years at the same site, you can get a lot done and make some really big impact and really know what you're doing and leave a good transition sustainability binder as well. Other places to look at opportunities for work is employers of national service. And we're going to get into going to school as well. There's also a schools for national service, but check out some of these links right here. Employers for national service. Okay. Also, other places to get connected. AmeriCorps Alumni has its own website. Go on the Vista campus, look on the job board there. Be sure to have your LinkedIn updated and including all relevant skills and experiences. Make sure to add lots of folks to that. And you can also search for jobs there. There is an AmeriCorps alumni page on LinkedIn, and we also have an alumni page for Vista members that were in our cohort. Be sure to use that digital online presence of yours. Okay, Almeida, I can't see the chat box. Did we get a question there? Feel free to read out from that if possible, because I'm going to be stuck on the presentation mode. Okay, one last important section before we go to, yes, one more long section that I'm going to get through right here. Education. So if you want to go to grad school, if you're going to go to an undergrad program, there are some similarities here. Mostly we're talking about continuing education, but some of these still apply to undergrad as well. So first off, you're going to want to do research. You're going to want to establish a timeline for when you want to go to school, figure out when you have to apply, decide what type of program. Are you going to do a master's in business? Are you going to do a master's in nonprofit management or master's in public policy, public administration? Are you going to do a master of arts? Are you going to do it of science? Then look at the schools that offer these sorts of programs and make a good short list. Anywhere from 3 to 10 schools, ranking them from most desired to the sure thing that you believe you're going to get in easily, and shooting for some in between that as well. Check out what the requirements are for admissions and for the application. If that includes references, that includes a letter of intent, you're going to want to be sure to prepare with all of those and get everything put together before the due date for the application. Check if your program requires a GRE or a GMAT or an LSAT, whatever the test is that they may require. They might not require any tests. And if you can set up a call or an appointment with an admissions specialist, then you can ask those questions also, which is recommended for at least a couple of the schools that you're interested in applying to. You'll need to order transcripts from your undergrad program. You might need to order it and have it sent directly to a school, figure out how to access your transcript, whether they need physical copies or virtual digital copies. And yes, it might be $15. It might be free to get your transcript. I had to pay for mine. Yes, get all that together, submit it at once, and make a good timeline for getting all those materials either written yourself or ordered appropriately. Again, you'll want to have a good resume, just like a regular employment. You're going to want to have a good 2 to 3 page resume, probably not longer than that. And you're going to want to have good and relevant references notified and selected. Process usually takes about 3 to 6 months before you would from application to starting. As mentioned earlier, there's a schools for national service as well as an employers for national service. This is a a group of couple hundred institutions that might either recognize your service in one way in your application process, or they may help out by matching your Ed Award, maybe by 100%, maybe by a portion. So you can get some additional money for school if you consider some of these. They might have on their application, are you a service member? Did you serve in AmeriCorps? I've seen that myself. Speaking about funding, you'll want to ask the school if they provide any funding. You'll want to see if they provide opportunities to uh, be a teaching assistant or work otherwise doing research. You'll want to ask if they accept FAFSA and fill out FAFSA forms as well. Just a tip right here, your living allowance, your education award should not count towards an expected family contribution. So that should not count. We mentioned this earlier, NCE status, the federal hiring status. You should be able to delay that. You should show evidence that you're, an acceptance letter, something like that you are enrolled in school, and you would send that to the hiring agency that you're interested in working for. Timer starts as soon as you finish service. So something to prepare ahead for. All right. Lastly, we do want to highlight again that there is an option to serve more AmeriCorps terms. You can serve in Vista for up to 5 years total. Typically, that means 5 full-year terms. You can serve as a Vista leader. You could serve in other branches, a state and national AmeriCorps member. There is also other paid, temporary positions, somewhat, a year-long contract, such as Baltimore Corps or Maryland Corps as well, if you want to continue to check out different institutions, private, public, government, nonprofit. There are other cool opportunities out there. Otherwise, these are our main topics we wanted to cover. We are at the point to accepting questions. So if you'd like to use your microphone, feel free to jump off of mute and ask away. We'd like to hear if you have any key takeaways from this or any big questions that came up as a result of all these different topics covered. But otherwise, if you have any tips or advice from your own experience that you would like to share with everyone while we're here, or other resources, job search, school, further service, please let us know and share with the cohort. We like to have a collaborative approach here and have you all help each other too.
Yeah, so I just wanted to ask, so you said for the NCE extension, like that would be on USA Jobs. That wouldn't be something managed through AmeriCorps or Vista Support or anything.
It's not, it's something that you would have to convey directly in writing to an agency that you were hoping to work for. So AmeriCorps wouldn't help you with that. They give you a service letter and you take that letter, or and you take your evidence of being in school, and you would give that to a federal agency.
Okay, so there's no literal timer. It's just sort of an understood thing.
There
Okay,
is no
thank you.
timer. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
absolutely.
I would say you should also, even if it hasn't been over a year, you should um be sure to mention specifically the NC status, since not every hiring person in every federal agency uh, knows about it necessarily or understands what it is, or how it works. So just putting, I was in AmeriCorps during this time period and it's been less than a year, and assuming that the hiring agency will look at that and say, oh, they must have NCE status, isn't something you can count on. So If you want to use it, make sure you're communicating it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, certainly write it out. Write it in that cover letter, write it in your resume, and download any other letters that you have about your service that describe the status and include that in your application. Any other questions? Any words of wisdom? Well, I know that we've provided a bunch of resources. We're gonna send out more afterwards. It's about the Life After Vista document that we have is about 40 pages, so it has lots of good stuff, and we recommend you all look through that once more. Keep going, referring to that, save it on your desktop, and then also please utilize the Vista Campus and LinkedIn. And there's one other service, the Member Assistance Program, the MAP program, which if you call, you should be able to set up career advice for free as well. It's consultation specifically for AmeriCorps members. It's a new program. We will send out a form about that, some info also. Otherwise, thank you all so much. We really appreciate you joining it. We hope that this was informative, that this got you all thinking and getting ready to prepare seriously for the end of service and whatever you do next. And we wish you all the best in that. What's one thing that you're looking forward to in springtime? It's the first or second day of spring. Happy spring, everyone.
First of all, thank you. Second of all, I just reorganized my room, so looking forward to experiencing that.
Some spring cleaning. Always a good thing. Any
Absolutely.
anything in the
Alyssa,
chat here?
Alyssa has some words of wisdom to provide us. Um, Sorry, I can't come off mute, but some words of wisdom. Don't get discouraged during the interview process. The right opportunity will come eventually.
Great advice there. Yep, it's always great opportunity to practice your interview skills. The more interviews you do, the better you will be at them. And those informal interviews can be a really good time to practice it well as well with low stakes. Just seeking to know more, but also practicing that question and that listening and responding that is so vital to a good interview.
Yeah. And putting your name in the running if they do have any openings in that department later. Maybe they'll think of you.
It's very true. You never know when someone's going to get back in touch and say they have an opportunity. We're seeing lots of chat box responses. Thank you all so much for using the chat today. We
Yeah.
appreciate the engagement.
Thank you, everybody from DSCI who came to join us as well.
Yes, indeed. And we are planning an in-person meetup next week in DC to try to check out some cherry blossoms. And we would be very happy to have both programs uh, go down and meet up together for that one. So please join us if you can next Saturday, the Saturday after next, the 29th of March. And if there are no more questions, then we will close up for the day and we'll follow up by the end of the day with the slides, some additional materials for you. Thank you all again.
Yeah. Happy Friday, everybody.